Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Superintendent Sherry Ibarra, and I just want to welcome you to our webinar, Idaho Perspectives. These are our Teachers of the Year and their response to the coronavirus pandemic. We're glad to have them and glad to have you listeners out there join in as well. Just a quick overview of kind of what the webinar is about today. We all know that the COVID-19 pandemic moved our students from brick and mortar learning environments to a virtual and distance learning overnight. And so as Idaho school districts and charter schools look to next fall and the lessons learned through the current school closures, our teachers are reimagining their classrooms with digital tools to help ensure students continue learning from home and in new school models. So today's webinar will provide an overview of our solutions to help support parents and students during this time of transition. Our webinar features two former Idaho Teachers of the Year, as well as the 2020 Idaho Teacher of the Year, and I will introduce them shortly and give you a little background. They will discuss ideas, tools, and strategies that they've used and are considering based on this spring's closures and what students and educators need moving forward to provide high-quality instruction to students in this time of uncertainty. So without further ado, it's my pleasure, and if each one of you could give me a quick wave as I say your name to introduce to you Stacey Waller and Mary Spiker and Becky Mitchell. And we'll go back up to Stacey Lawler. She is in the top right corner of the screen. She spent 16 years teaching Idaho students ranging from kindergarten to 8th grade. Her first teaching job was in the Valley View School District, teaching physical education at East Canyon Elementary. When her family moved to the northern part of the state, she spent countless hours volunteering at her children's school before going back to the gym to teach at Twin Lakes Elementary for 6 years. Most recently, she's been at Timberlake Junior High teaching PE and health, where she found her true passion, helping her students understand that it's okay not to be okay. So welcome, Stacey. And we have Mary Spiker with us. In the bottom left corner of the screen there, Mary Spiker is the 2017 Teacher of the Year for the state of Idaho. She's been in the field of education for 29 years. She currently teaches first grade at IT Stoddard Elementary, but will be returning to kindergarten next year. Mary is most proud of her ability to build community among students, families, and community members together as they work to build the world of tomorrow. Welcome to Mary Spiker. And then Becky Mitchell is with us down there in the right corner. Becky has been a high school English and physical science teacher at Vision Charter School in Caldwell, Idaho for 11 years. Before that, she taught everything from Spanish to kindergartners to community college chemistry. And at VCS in Caldwell, she serves as ELA head of the department and lead teacher for secondary. With her bachelor's degree in chemistry education and English education and a master's in science education, she's taught many dual credit classes through Northwest Nazarene University, the College of Western Idaho, and Boise State University as well. She's currently working on her EDD in curriculum and instruction from Walden University. Becky initiated the robotics program in Caldwell and watched it grow to Lego first and to the teams. During the summer, she's been a teacher mentor for the Idaho Science and Aerospace Scholars Program and guiding teams through their summer academy at BSU and the NASA Ames Research Center. She also is the drama director, and this year added a broadcasting class that produced school news programs and advertising campaigns. And professionally, she has contributed to both English and science education in her state as a member of those respective societies, and is a presenter at the regional conferences. She's also worked with the State of Idaho Department of Education on the chemistry end-of-year course exam review committee and in the master teacher cohort as well. In 2018, she represented Idaho as their Teacher of the Year and traveled to Berlin as part of that experience. So as you see, We have quite the lineup for you today in Idaho. We're pretty proud of these Teachers of the Year, and we're going to go ahead and kick it off with them. And I would like first to ask each and one of them to share some positive stories about their district or their schools or their classroom during this pandemic. And I think we're going to start with Becky Mitchell. So Becky?
Hi, everybody. I have a kind of a unique situation in that our district just did business as usual. So starting March 30th, we went ahead and continued on with K through 12 education like we'd been doing. But the thing I thought was a real success and that I'm the most proud of is how our entire school stepped up to make sure each child was successful. Our EAs contacted families weekly. We dropped supplies to households. And I really got to see that community and communication really does pay off for distance education. So it was wonderful as a community to see us all come together that way.
Thank you, Becky. Becky, could you just clarify when you say you went on as business as usual, were you meeting, were the kids still coming to class in person?
No, all distance education. And we already had like a learning management system platform in place. So they would just, go onto that and we would have live Google Meets. So no, not in the building, but distance education, but still full education. Yeah.
Great, appreciate the clarification there. So next, let's go to Mary Spiker, and she can talk to us a little about some of the positive stories in her district or her classroom during this pandemic.
All right, before I jump in, I want to share a story about my classroom with you, but I also want to just take a moment to shout out to the lunch program because it was amazing to watch the people come together, not just in my district, but across the state to make sure all of these children were served hot lunches. And I am just so impressed. And so just a huge shout out to all of those workers. In my classroom this year, I started a program with my kids called Be the Somebody. Instead of always, if you see garbage on the floor or somebody alone out on the playground, be the somebody that picks up the garbage. Be the somebody that is that friend. And so when COVID hit and we moved to our homes for distant learning, it was how can I continue to cultivate that in their homes? And it was beautiful. The very first thing my students did is our foster grandparents, they were going to be the somebody and support them because of course they were quarantined in their homes. So my students all wrote letters to them and in support of them. They drew pictures to be handed out with the boxes of food from our local food bank, again, trying to be the somebody. And then out of the blue, a parent contacted me and said, I have all these bags of potatoes that we'd like to be the somebody, and can you get them to all the other students in the class? And I said, absolutely. And then following that up, a parent who works at Town and Country got a hold of me because I had wanted to drop a science bag by to my students. And she said, we'd like to donate the pots and the seeds in that. We'd like to be the somebody to help do this, to make it available for all the kids. And the best part of that is one of my students that I had not been able to make contact with, I was still texting and emailing and dropping supplies, but really had not made official contact with them since March 17th. I received a text just yesterday morning from them for the first time saying, oh my goodness, my son planted those seeds in those bulbs and he was so excited. Thank you. And then started to inquire about the work that he should have been doing all this time. So anyways, I just felt like it was a huge win.
That is an awesome story about relationships and how important they are, Mary. I really appreciate that. And then it got the conversation started about where should he be academically, right?
Exactly.
So, we'll go on to the current Teacher of the Year, Stacey Lawler. And Stacey, do you want to share with us some positive stories about your district or your classroom during this closure?
Yeah, I think for me, I just wanted to be able to reach out to our students. So at the junior high, one of the things that we did is every single staff member sent letters to all of our students. So that was kind of like part one. And then actually this week I sort of jumped on board with the high school. We drove letters, and the high school staff had gotten t-shirts for every single one of the seniors. And this particular group of seniors is kind of special to me because when I first started at Timberlake, they were 7th graders. So when my husband was making plans to be part of this drive around, I asked if I could join him, and it was amazing to be able to go out. First of all, I realized how big the Lakeland School District is. It's huge. We drove 85 miles and we only had a fourth of the students. So it was pretty crazy. Makes me appreciate our bus drivers even more, I think. But it was so neat to be able to go out and be able to see our students and be able to give them a little present. And then of course on Facebook, the response from our parents, I had parents texting me and posting that they were in tears, and you could just tell that it just really meant something to them. And I was just really, really fortunate to be a part of that. So it was pretty cool.
Well, those are great stories, and I think the one theme that's coming out for me as we've talked across the nation about what we're doing. We're talking with superintendents and administrators, but talking with the teachers, really, you guys are at the shop level ground floor, right? And you're really hitting home on how important a relationship or a partnership is with your families right now. So, and how you built that relationship so that you can build that bridge into the academic piece during this closure too. So I think those stories really give everybody hope and show just how far teachers are going during this time of the pandemic to really make sure kids are still engaged and families have what they need. So appreciate that. I want to move in a little bit more to the impact of COVID-19 and kind of what's been your approach to instruction, or how you're addressing that continuous education besides the relationship building piece. How has your approach maybe changed to instruction and to your instruction? So Becky, you talked a little bit earlier about how it was kind of a streamlined process. You were already online, and so has anything changed there for you all?
I would say the big difference was trying to figure out how to have interaction between students and teachers and students and them and each other. They really miss that. I really miss that. And so we landed on Google Meet as our platform. We tried Zoom as well. And it was just nice to see their faces. We started this thing where I had half the heart and they had the other half of the heart. And it was just a way to still be with each other and learn from each other. And then they could ask questions in chat and I could answer those questions. But then I really found that the key was to have them connect with each other. And so I ended up doing a lot more partner work or group work than I had ever done before, because let's be honest, they'll answer a text from their friend more than an email from their teacher. And so some of the kids that I had a real issue getting to engage with anything, I would deliberately put them in a group with somebody who was their buddy. And then suddenly I was getting work from them. It was miraculous. But I really think that what I had to do was be super creative so that everything was very applicable to their life right now. We did a lot of COVID themed assignments, and then that everything connected them either to me or to each other.
That's great. So it sounds to me like real life learning. The kids are really want to be engaged around real life situations. And I often hear that from students as I travel too. So it's great to hear that. So Becky, just to add to that, so what tools have helped you to maximize that student learning, would you say, during this process?
So we use as Edmodo as a learning management system, but I think the key to a learning management system is that it's one place where they can come find where their assignments are. They can turn in their assignments there. It communicates with parents, so parents know what the assignments are. And then you're also able to give feedback. And that was really helpful because I could immediately on an assignment say, you're on the right track, good job, because they're trying to figure it out from maybe a presentation I've created or our live meeting. And then they could also ask questions that way. So that's what really made the transition a success in the long run.
So it sounds to me like a really streamlined approach to communicating with parents as well as students throughout your building was kind of the online approach. Is that what you're telling me? Kind of the learning management system approach? Kind of just a real direct way of everybody knows this is how we do business? I think you're kind of frozen there, Becky, a little bit. So we'll come back. So Mary, did you have anything that you want to add that you found, impacted your approach to student instruction during this time?
My district had a different approach because we did not have that learning management system in place across the district. So different people were using different things. And when I was really thinking about this question, honestly, Superintendent, what I kept thinking about was this analogy about picture a teacher, a student, and a parent going out for a leisurely boat ride on a Saturday, and they all know the destination and they're out there enjoying themselves, when all of a sudden they get caught up in this rapid and they realize they're headed for the falls. And so they're all grabbing for the tools that they have available. And so they grab these paddles and they're paddling around and they're paddling around, and they have plan A and they are using everything they have to solve the issue in front of them. And pretty soon their arms become exhausted and they start to drift again closer. And so while they're still implementing plan A, plan B is created. And that plan B brings a little bit of relief, a little less stress, and allows them to get close enough to the bank that they're able to jump to shore. So there they stand, beaten and haggard, but they survived. They conquered it, they got out alive. But as they're standing there, those three people that entered that boat earlier in the day are not the same three people that are standing on that bank. They've been changed due to the experience that they just encountered. And so they leave the boat behind because their arms are too tired to carry it. And they just managed to get their legs moving in the direction of their car. But on the way back to their car, they start to reflect on what just happened. And they all agreed they never wanted to go through that again, but they also realized that they learned some very important skills and strategies through this experience. So they started sharing from each of their perspectives what they had learned. And then they started to thoughtfully identify the things that would have made this experience maybe it be different than it was, or if they encountered it again, that it would be better. And so they began to make plans just in case they met with this exact adventure again.
Thank you for that. So with that, what do you think will change, Mary, as a result, when facilities possibly open again in the fall? From those experiences, what do you think will change in schools as a result of COVID-19?
I think our families, our students are going to come, and everybody, even teachers, are a little hesitant because they're not certain what to expect. They're not sure, are they going to be in school every day? Are they going to have all of their class? Are they going to have part of their class? Are they going to be using a blended learning model? And so I think I would love to see decisions obviously made as soon as possible so the best plans could be made. But I think teachers will do what they've always done, and they will meet those families in their need, those students in their need. They will, I would say, backwards plan. Say, what does the success criteria look like for these students? What do they need to learn to get there? And then they will implement things accordingly. Because with all that, they have to still maintain high expectations and rigor, because our kids, yes, they may have lost some here, but I do believe given time, we can catch them back up.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So Becky, it looks like you froze and we lost you and you've rejoined us. So welcome again.
I guess I'm
Look.
the example of technology difficulties. Sorry about that.
Right? We all have to be flexible right now, and we're adjusting. So nothing like on-the-job training for that, right in front of everybody on a live webinar. So thank you for that. Stacey, do you want to add anything to what you think will change as a result in schools because of the COVID-19 in the fall?
You know, I really don't know. I think about myself. I guess I always just think about like how I am going to change. I know for me at the beginning of this, I sat down and I thought, what do I want my students? I'm a physical education and health teacher. What do I want them to do? And I was like, it was very simple. I just wanted my kids to get moving. I knew for their physical health, that was going to be important, and especially for their mental health. So the way that I kind of approached my teaching was just to start making a ton of videos, because I thought if my kids can see me doing something, then they'll be inspired, maybe. Like they can run faster than I can, or they can do a better dance than I can. So I think about the future for me. I can see me now bringing that into my classroom, you know, the more of the online creating opportunities for kids that way. I've never really used technology being in the gym and even in the classroom and health. So for me, I think about it personally, what is going to change. And I think that my comfort level for sure with technology is going to improve. But I don't know if I have the best answer for that. I feel like I'm still, you know, just keeping my head above water and hoping that we kind of figure this out together as a state, you know?
Right. Well, and I appreciate that, because we've often heard, we as educators, I was a former teacher myself, that there's a digital divide, right? That the kids that we're teaching now have way more skill than we do as educators sometimes. And so we have a real opportunity here to shine a real bright spot on the fact that we've had to become, you know, technology experts too. And I don't know about you all, but Zoom, I've gotten really good at that over the last couple of months, and I'm an expert. And then someone switched it up on me today, Stacey, and tried to do a little Google Meet and threw me offline there. But anyway, Stacey and I will talk about in a minute. I streamed into her classroom today, and so I agree with you. I think you know, we are changing and evolving, and so we think about how we can do that for our kids and how we need to be online a little bit more, and we're getting more technology savvy, all of us. And so I totally agree with that. And I'm pleased to hear you say we need to think about it and as we change ourselves, even as adults. So Becky, did you want to add anything to what you think will change as a result for our schools or our kids during this COVID-19 pandemic?
I think that we have thought more about what are the essentials of learning. I heard say that, and I would agree. You know, what do we want our students to walk away with? But the other thing that I've become far more aware of is what my students' home lives are like. It really shined a light on the fact that our students need a safe, dedicated place to learn, and that often their homes are not that place. And so I will just be more sensitive and more empathetic to the fact that, you know, I need to make sure that I'm capitalizing on my time with them, because that may be the only learning time that they have, because they've been caregivers of younger siblings. They've now had 2 jobs. You know, it's and I have high school age kids, obviously, but that's been really challenging for them. So I will understand how valuable their time is and make sure that I'm capitalizing on that.
So speaking of that, how do we address the learning loss with that, Becky? So we know that we have some students who have, you know, that there is a gap there. There's an achievement gap. It existed before this pandemic, and it's still there. So knowing that there's not a dedicated place in some of those homes to learn, that kids have some personal struggles, and now we have a pandemic. Do you have any suggestions on how we might address that achievement gap moving forward? Is there some things that we can do to maximize our resources maybe? So.
Well, the first thing is I'm encouraging all my students, and I would encourage anyone listening to this webinar, summer learning has never been more important than it is this summer. Do not let your students' minds rest this summer. There's dual credit classes they can take at their local community college or university. We're going to, I know as a state, try to give them some summer programs. And every library tries to give summer programs, but it is essential that their minds, especially in the areas of math and reading, no offense, Stacey, sorry, they need to be active too. But math and reading, those are the areas I worry the most about. And so I just really hope that every parent tries to seek that opportunity for their students this summer.
Wonderful. Mary, how about you? Do you have anything you want to add to how we could help address that learning loss?
I would second everything that Becky just said. And that was the first thing that I had put down, is just some kind of summer school for these kids, to just keep their minds and their bodies engaged and learning and moving forward. And with that, if it was a structured summer school, really looking at it as front loading those skills for next year rather than intervening last year's skills, so that they are ready and prepared to begin at the start of the next school year.
Wow, I really, as a teacher myself, can connect to front loading those skills for the next year, because I think a lot of times we want to, try to go backwards. And so I really appreciate you mentioning, think about front loading what's coming. So of course we'll have to address, sometimes the skills build on each other and we'll have to address that gap. But I think that's a great something to really think about, because I know you all, Teachers of the Year, are really meeting on that weekly and talking about maybe a menu of options for school districts to choose from and how they could address the summer, or could address the reading loss. And we're already talking about summer programs, and then we could include the front loading piece and Stacey's movement piece. We don't want to just, focus on math and reading like Becky said, but I just want to tell you guys I'm enjoying the camaraderie here and the upbeat, emotional piece of what we're going through, because I think kids, really look to their teacher a lot for that support. And so I am sitting here realizing that kids are in good hands. So with who's representing us right now. So moving on next to something else I wanted to talk about before Becky kind of dropped off there. We talked about maybe, more online opportunities for kids moving forward. So what have you experienced, if any? I know you all were already completely online in terms of students' availability to devices and connectivity, because I know in a state like Idaho, where we're primarily rural, and you're in Caldwell, so maybe you don't see it as much, but I am concerned and hear from a lot of districts about connectivity and devices moving forward. They know how important that is. So could you speak to that?
It is. I think it's the only way that we're ever going to be able to really ensure rigor, is we have to have equality with connection and availability of devices. And what will happen is, even let's say a family who is someone living in Caldwell City, they have 7 or 8 students in the family. And any broadband is going to be challenged when 7 or 8 devices are trying to access it. And I do have many, many students who cannot, and who ended up doing a majority of their homework on their phone because it was the only real data source that they had. And so I really hope that the CARES money that's coming in, and any way that the state and even local businesses, Mary had brought that up, anybody who can support connectivity, it's what's going to ensure every student gets an equal chance to learn.
Wonderful. So Mary, do you want to talk to that? Have you seen any struggles, or what do you see with connectivity and devices for our kids?
Absolutely. I have 19 students in my class, and 12 of those 19 students only had access to their parents' phone. And again, I teach first grade, but some of those phones have limited data plans on them. So those weren't even a viable option. And so we tended to do packets or mastery-based bingo cards with our students across the district. Not that we didn't utilize Zoom or Google Meet or some of those other platforms as well, But for many of our students, that was not an option whatsoever for them to engage in the learning process.
And Stacey, you're up north. So what I like about the Teachers of the Year, we have a nice group of someone from every kind of section of the state. So being up north, what have you seen as far as connectivity and devices go?
Yeah, we got a lot of hills and mountains. I got a better picture of our school district driving around, dropping those senior presents off. I was shocked by some of the very, very remote locations that our children live in. And I know that as I'm teaching my class, most of the kids will turn off their screen or their video camera. And I'll be like, guys, you turn on I want to see your faces. And it's because they're all in cars. I am shocked by the amount of children whose parents are driving them around to different spots in order to get internet connection. So for us, for sure, everything that these ladies said is absolutely true. And I think just especially living up north where we have very remote areas and it's just really hard to get a good connection. I probably had 5 emails from students this morning, like, Mrs. Lawler, I'm sorry, I can't get on, my internet is bad. And that's just the reality right now and I'm not sure how to fix that. It is definitely a problem.
So Becky had mentioned the CARES Act funding, and for those people watching, you know, the state of Idaho received approximately $48 million for the CARES Act, of which 90% is going to go out to districts of that money. So thinking about that money, what do you know, Becky, it sounded like earlier, it sounds like to me, you're all thinking the same thing as far as where should some of that money be applied moving forward. So Becky, you want to start with you?
I think that every district having the availability of the learning management system is going to be really important. I would say the biggest complaint that we got from parents is we weren't using just one learning management system yet. We were using various ones, Google, Edmodo, and it was really hard on families. They need one place to go to get all the information, and it needs to be a robust system that will make it less work on teachers. This is basically, you have 2 jobs. If you're an online teacher and a brick and mortar teacher during this time, that's like 2 jobs, but a learning management system can help with that. And so that, to me, going forward is the thing that I would love to see happen. And I know we're working on it with the Teachers of the Year, but just for every district to be able to say to their parents and students, this is our learning management system, give them training on it so parents and students feel really comfortable with it. And then this will be so much smoother in the future.
Great. And so, Mary, do you want to add, where do you think some of that federal stimulus money should be applied?
Exactly what Becky said. I just second everything that she just said, especially the training piece, because I think if you put a learning management system in place without the training of both parents and teachers, it will limit us in what we'll actually be able to do with it. But I think to have something that is consistent for parents will help them so much, because I witnessed parents just break down trying to learn different things, and they felt like they were failing their children, and that's an awful feeling as a parent. And they weren't. They were absolutely doing the very best that they knew how to do, but maybe we can do it better. Maybe we can provide training and provide something consistent for them. So if we can provide that, and then the devices and connectivity try to help enhance that as well, I think that will definitely kind of turn things around for Idaho.
And Stacey, you want to add anything to that?
You know, I think what I'm concerned about, besides everything those ladies said, is I'm concerned about the loss of staff and support that we have at our school. So jobs being lost. And I'm not saying that right now that that's what's happening necessarily in my school district, but I think I'm very concerned about trying to do all these things with fewer people.
So it sounds like to me, if I were to recap what all of you said, you know, you need a learning management system, but none of that will be successful without devices, connectivity, and then of course training for everybody. Like Stacey said, there could be a staff shortage. How are we going to get that accomplished? And that's a whole philosophical shift. You can't just hand somebody a learning management system and say, here, do this. We already figured out, adults, as how we had to get a little bit better at technology, that technology divide really does exist. And so it sounds to me like this would be, you know, several steps in the process if we were to go down this path as a state, that we would need all these pieces in order for that to be successful moving forward. And training for teachers to make that philosophical shift is really going to be very important. I even think about myself, if I was to go back to the classroom, you know, I would certainly want somebody to show me, you know, just because you hand me a learning management system and a platform doesn't necessarily make me an online teacher. But I think the one great thing about what I've heard from like the Khan Academy and Sal Khan and some of these national, Sal Khan through his Khan Academy and some of these national experts that we heard from a couple weeks ago was there's nothing more important than the teacher. So you cannot have an online system. The teacher is still number one. So I'm excited that we're having conversations about don't forget professional development. We need that. So that kind of bridges into the next question I wanted to ask you. So how's the morale among the teachers? And, you know, how has your district leaders supported you during this time? It's very challenging. I mean, it's very challenging personally at home. So I'll start with you, Stacey. I know that, you know, the social emotional learning piece with you is very important. So how's the morale among the teachers?
You know, we're struggling. This is hard. We are all doing the very best we can, and we are trying to stay positive, and we are a united front. But I'm not going to lie, this is hard. This is, I became a teacher because I love being with my students, and seeing them on a Google Meet is just not the same. It's been hard. I miss seeing them. So the morale is we're doing the best that we can. But it's a struggle right now. I just want to see them. I just want to be in class. So trying to kind of maintain that, and reaching out and talking about all the social emotional stuff and making sure that our mental health is good is important as well. But more than anything, I want to be with my students. And until that happens, I still feel like I'm going to be struggling a little bit.
Well, and Becky, you mentioned today that you're all still meeting via, was it Google Meets? Your
Google
teachers
Meet,
are all,
yeah.
how's your morale?
I just echo everything that Stacey said. If I didn't know that students were the reason that I went into teaching, that's what distance learning has showed me. And I guess what's hard about things like Google Meet is you have to mute the students if you're going to get anything done, because the moment that you've got 20-some kids without mute on and dogs and little siblings and what have you, you can't get anything done. And so what I miss the most is that interaction. And we did things like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Kahoot, but Kahoot is like a quiz program that you could do, and they loved that. But I would say teachers are mourning right now. I mean, I had this whole post about how I've gone through the steps of grieving for my classroom and my kids. But I think that they're mourning too. And we all just miss each other, and we really miss being able to be in the classroom with each other every day.
And Mary, how's teacher morale in your area?
I think it's been a roller coaster. You know, teachers are notorious when given a challenge, and COVID's no different. It's like, here it is, what are you going to do? And they just come together and they jump in, and there is this magical energy that comes from a group of teachers trying to address whatever situation it may be. And then when the decision came for most districts that they were not going back this year, then there was just this low, and it was painful for people, and it was painful for families. And as we would reach out, and you know, whether you did Zoom or you were on Facebook, whatever you chose to do, or we did a lot of door drops. So I personally went to every one of my students' homes every other week and would be dropping things. And we went from waving through windows to standing on front steps, and me at my vehicle, just because those little ones, they just needed to see you and know that you were okay. And I needed to see them and know they were okay. And you know, and this will just kind of bring the depth to what the other two have said. So my birthday was a couple weeks ago, and when my husband said, "What do you want for your birthday?" the tears fell, and I said, "I just want to see my kids." And so he said, "Then let's go see your kids."
That's awesome. I saw a commercial, kind of reminds me this morning of what you're all talking about. In the commercial, I won't say it exactly, but the commercial said, "Do you remember the days where we also pray for a day off, and now we're all praying to go back to work?" So kind of, and I tell people all the time, teachers are doing great things. They're knocking on doors. They miss their kids. And so, Stacey, when I zoomed in, I had to call in because I didn't get to, my skills on the Google Meet, you know, I was expecting Zoom, and we ended up switching it up on the superintendent. So I called in, and she was doing this activity that I think addressed morale. And she asked me what I was doing to keep up my, emotional needs, and I got the opportunity to share that with kids. But Stacey, I know that social emotional learning is really important in this time, this crisis. So how can we help? What can we do? I know today the thing you were doing was talking to kids about gratitude, and we talked about, you know, that's something that you have to practice. It's not something that you just get up in the morning and you understand. You practice gratitude, you practice appreciation. What else socially and emotionally can we do to help?
You know, I think for me, when this COVID-19 happened, I really was having a hard time understanding my own stress and how I was kind of processing this. And I know a lot of people have talked about Maslow's hierarchy, and when I started really thinking about why I was struggling, it made sense. And it's like, if you've got that bottom part of the pyramid that we're talking about with physiological needs, and we're afraid to go to the store to get our food, and we maybe don't have any food because our parents just lost their job, and then that you start to understand why we're not handling life very well. And right above that physiological need is safety. And I don't feel safe right now. I'm starting to feel a little safer. But I think when I started understanding my own stuff, I started looking at my students and understanding their needs. So what do we do? Obviously, I'm a physical education and health teacher, so I think daily exercise is important. I think routine is important. I think limiting screen time is important. There's a ton of things I think are important, but I think more than anything is we just truly need to listen to our students. I've had a couple phone calls with parents and a couple emails with students who are reaching out to me, and they're frustrated because they don't understand why they're having a hard time concentrating right now. And so I'm trying to explain to them that it's okay that you're having a hard time concentrating right now. Right now, I am not the stellar teacher that I hope and aspire to be. I'm just not. I'm not able to maintain that top of Maslow's hierarchy right now. I'm not there. I'm maintaining, and I'm doing the very best I can. So I'm just trying to explain to my students and to the parents that I talk to that we need to give ourselves some grace, and we're just going to do the best we can right now. And we are going to take care of ourselves. We're going to do some self-care. We're going to do all of the things that matter. And the most important thing is just having grace for ourselves and having grace for our students, and understanding that this is just what it is, and we're going to get through it. And there will be brighter days, but it's tough. It's tough right now. And it's okay to say, I'm struggling right now, because I am struggling right now. That's my reality.
Right, right. Appreciate that. Like you always say, it's okay not to be okay, right? So tell kids that it's okay to say that. It's okay. I don't feel too good right now. Well, none of us do. So, but we'll get through it. Mary, how are you all addressing kind of the social emotional piece of all of this?
You know, I jump online several times a week, and that's really what I talk to my parents about and how they can check in. Because with younger kids, and probably the same with older children, their behaviors are their way of communicating. And they're not just being naughty. They're not just being this. There's usually underlying reasons. And really to take the time to sit down and talk to them and to listen to them and to respect what they're saying. Even if their feelings are different from yours, that is how they feel about it. And it's okay. Their feelings are okay. So it's
Thank
okay
you.
not to be okay.
Right. And Becky?
The first thing that we would do for every Google Meet that we'd have is in the chat window, I'd have them boil it down. Sometimes it was just a word. Sometimes I'd give them 5 words. And I just wanted to say how they felt. And in the beginning, it was, how do you feel about being home? And some kids were like, it's awesome. I sleep in every day. And some kids were like, I hate it. I miss my friends. And then it was interesting because this last week is our last week. And so my last Google Meet, I said, well, how do you feel about this school year ending? And most of them, you'd think they'd be like, yes, summer. But they were sad because it's really been their connection to the world and to each other. And they were sad to lose that. And so I think taking the time, you feel really pressured to get all this. Like I had a lot of dual credit classes, so I was really pressured to get all this curriculum in. And I made myself stop and go, these kids just want one person to see how they felt. And every email I'd put a bunch of memes in because that's how our generation communicates. And I'd be like, how you feeling with a meme? I was probably more, I don't want to say casual, but comfortable with the kids than ever before because I just wanted them to know that somebody cared about them, understood this was hard, and was there for them.
That's great. So on that same kind of topic, so what were some of the resources? I'm hearing you all say that kids learn kind of 2 different ways, socially and emotionally, and then academically. I mean, and they kind of go together there. You can't really separate them. But what were some of the resources for you as a teacher that help you deal with some of those realities? Could be anything that helps you with distance learning, could be anything, a resource that's really helped you just connect with your kids. So I'll start with Becky. What are some of the resources you as a teacher have found very helpful for any other teacher out there that might be listening? Was it the Zoom? Was it Google? Was it the learning management system? Was it something else?
What I'm going to say is probably, that sounds strange, but don't feel inundated by everything being sent at you. So at the very beginning of this, I must have gotten an email a day saying, here's this platform you can use, and here's this platform you can use. And instead, I would just pick something that you and your students are comfortable with and roll with that. Because they don't really have the energy to learn something brand new. You don't either. So find that one thing. And I think the biggest key is communication. Whatever platform you use, it needs to have rich communication between you and your students, with your students, with each other, some trusted communication. Yeah, there's about, I would say, 1 million programs out there, and you can't use them all. So just find one that works for you.
Awesome. Mary?
I'm going to go to the relationship piece again because I teach younger students. It was really communicating with parents. And what I realized is, you have a typical work day, but when we went to distant learning, you really had to be open all times of the day. You had to be flexible and accessible to parents because you had parents that were essential workers and they were not around during the day to do, whether it be a Zoom meet or whatever other platform you may choose to use. And so you might get that call at 8 or 9 o'clock at night saying, how can I support my child? And you needed to be open and ready, and you needed to be able to hear and address their concerns at all times.
Stacey?
Well, mine is not very traditional at all, but again, if I look back, what did I want my kids to do? I wanted my kids to move their bodies. So I'm going to say my best tool was Instagram. I started posting. I know. Just everybody can just shake their head. But really, I just wanted to inspire my kids. So every day I would post a video, like whether it was walking my dogs or going for a run or doing yoga or drinking water or whatever. And that's how I found most of my students were relating to me, because they were on Instagram, they were following me. And so then we would get into our Google Meet and we'd talk about what they saw my post on Instagram. And all of that seems really strange because I was really against social media at the beginning of this process. So this is kind of a big step for me. So I know it's not traditional, but again, for me, I just wanted to inspire my kids to move. And so I thought if they're seeing me move, then maybe they'll be inspired. So
That's great. So I think we have time maybe for one more question. What about parents? How have you communicated with parents and helped them manage their students' learning? I know we've got connectivity issues and device issues. I mean, what advice do you have out there for other people who might be listening? What ideas do you have around communicating with parents? Because we all know as educators, a child's parent or guardian is their first teacher. So Becky, we'll start with you. How have you communicated with parents?
I would say one of the big changes is that we communicated with parents a lot more than we ever had before. Often in secondary land, parents step back, just kind of a natural, I think, and they don't need to. We still need you in secondary land, but they do. And they were far more engaged. But what I kept telling parents is, A, you're not the teacher, I'm still the teacher. And so I'd love you to help your child be accountable to his learning, but still point them back to me if they're frustrated and don't understand. I'm happy to be there. I'm happy to explain. But I wanted to take that weight off of parents because they did feel like teachers. And I'm not, no, you're not the teacher. I'm still a teacher. You're good. Come back to me. Ask me the questions. And I think that helped, that they knew that their only job is what their job had been before, which is just making sure your child is accessing their learning.
Great. Mary, how about you? What ideas did you have around communicating with parents?
So I utilized Facebook actually and did Facebook Live videos because we had been doing that all through the school year, and would jump on and provide teaching videos, share stories, all different kinds of things, pictures that I had taken while I was out visiting students and that, to kind of keep everybody connected. But again, looking at the needs of the different families, whether it be however it was best to communicate with them, emails, text, in writing, when I would drop something off at a house, have everything bulleted out for them, send them personal videos, whatever it took for that child, just meeting them and in their need, however I could do that.
So it sounds like, Mary, you tried all different kinds of different methods, email, text, Facebook. Yeah, that's great. And so, Stacey, I'm excited to hear if you tried Instagram with parents or you tried something else, because I know I don't do Instagram either, but I have a feeling I'm going to end up learning quickly here the minute I say I don't use Instagram. So, Stacey, how did you communicate with parents?
you can really see the generation gap because my parents were the ones on Facebook. So I was posting on Facebook too. So we were kind of bridging a lot of worlds together. So I guess the thing that I have right now, and I know that a lot of our parents kind of expressed this in the beginning, and I really think that would help if we get, one LMS to work on, is they were just getting overwhelmed by phone calls and emails, and they just were like, can we just slow down? So I guess that's the one thing, as opposed to communicating, because obviously we need to communicate, but figuring out a way to do it in a manner so they don't feel overwhelmed. Because I know when I have 80 emails in my account, that creates anxiety for me. So I think trying to figure out a way to communicate, because obviously that's really important, but to do it in a way that makes them not feel so overwhelmed.
Well, this hour has gone by so fast. I could sit and talk to you all day. I loved everything you had to say. I really felt a connection there from, Becky saying, you're not the teacher, I'm still here. I remember my son was in high school last year, and, I was a Facebook person. He goes, ooh, only older people do Facebook, right? So, from the view of a high schooler. And then Mary, you talking about, for your birthday, wanting to see your kids and, understanding that relationships, especially with the little ones, are super important. They're very impressionable right now. And then, paddling as hard as you can just to stay afloat. So your insight on the direction you think, systematic communication with parents, the learning management system, connectivity, devices, all that has been very valuable. And I just want to give you a very heartfelt thank you for everything that you do, and for, giving up an hour of your time today to kind of talk about those things that are very personal to us. And again, these are the Idaho's Teacher of the Years, and now we know why. So thank you, everybody. It was great to be on, and we'll see you next time. Join us next week. We'll have some Idaho superintendents talking about the CARES Act and policy, and maybe somehow planning if we get to reopen in the fall, if social distancing is still in effect, what that might look like. So thanks, everybody. Stay safe.